Om Jananim Sharadam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhurmuhu. Taking refuge at the feet of Mother Sharda Devi and Sri Ramakrishna, the teacher of the world, I bow down again and again. Good morning, and thank you for this warm welcome. The topic today, as it has been announced, is Sri Ramakrishna and our time. So, how Sri Ramakrishna is meaningful to us in our time, that will be the focus. I don't think I need a lot of words to explain who Sri Ramakrishna was. Most of you are very well aware of. Sri Ramakrishna was born in a very remote village about 60 miles northwest from the city of Calcutta in the year 1836. February 18 was the date. Kamarpukur was the village. Khudiram Chattopadhyay, a very traditional, righteous, pious Brahmin, was his father, and mother Shama. He had two older brothers and an older sister. When he was just a 17-year-old boy, he was taken to the city of Calcutta by his older brother. Father had expired long back. And the turn of fate brought both these brothers, Ramkumar and Godadhar, to another village near city of Calcutta, Dakshineshwar, where eventually Sri Ramakrishna had to accept the job of the priesthood of that Kali temple. Within a very short period of time, something happened that was miraculous in the history of spirituality. With the ease and rapidity with which Sri Ramakrishna all of a sudden turned to deep level of spiritual exploration, and he explored the secret of God that has never been seen before. He discovered God in many different ways that were available to him at his time, and after being fully satisfied with his understanding and his experience of God first-hand, face-to-face, he spent the rest of his life, a few years, in spreading the message of love of God and spreading the message of harmony of religion, and also developing a bunch of very sincere followers, disciples, for this message to be spread to the posterity. Then at the age of 50, we find that in the year 1886, the date was August 16, that Sri Ramakrishna entered into Mahasamadhi or passed away from this our open side. This is the storyline of who Sri Ramakrishna was and how he lived his life. To the ordinary people of his time, he appeared very ordinary person. They were not very impressed. We see that one of his childhood friend, when saw Gadai at Dakshineshwar, then he was so amazed to find that he had not changed at all. He was the same Gadai that he had seen in village Kamarpukur. Other employees of that Kali temple, they considered him to be a lunatic priest who did not know how to profit from his proximity to the owner, very rich owner of this temple estate. On the other hand, there were others like Chandra Haldar, who was a priest in the Kalihar temple, he thought that Ramakrishna was not only a priest of Kali, but he had some occult power. And he had put the owner of this temple, this Mathurnath Biswas, under his some kind of spell and manipulating him. So the common men of his time, as we can see from many different instances, how they looked upon Ramakrishna. They did not see him any different from the people of that time. On the other hand, a little bit investigation into his life and many different incidents that had happened in his life that would show very quickly and easily to everybody that he was not only an ordinary man, but his feats could be only be compared with a superman. We find that people, those who are intelligent people of his time, from say Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar or Girish Chandra Ghosh or Keshav Chandra Sen or Mohendralal Sarkar, they were big people of their time, very famous, most respected in the society, and with insight to people of high religious wisdom within them, like Dayananda Saraswati or Swami Vivekananda. He was a young man, of course, but he was not an ordinary man. For them, it did not take a lot to find the Ramakrishna as the gem of a person in the society sitting there. They could easily discover in Ramakrishna someone absolutely fascinating and totally different. How different? Not only of his time, people who came after him in future, we have found that people, those who were intelligent, those who were insightful, those who could see through, they found Sri Ramakrishna as very special. Swami Vivekananda called him Avatar Varishta, as we know. That is the greatest of all God incarnates. Swami Sharadananda Ji Maharaj, he says, Acharyanam Mahacharya, the great teacher of all teachers. And when they say so, they are not just giving a light compliment to somebody. They mean it. Writing about the life story of Sri Ramakrishna, we find that Christopher Isherwood has considered him as a phenomenon. The great mythologist and the teacher of comparative religion, Joseph Campbell, while talking about Sri Ramakrishna, he says that Sri Ramakrishna has cut the hinges of heaven and released the fountain of divine bliss. That is something coming from Joseph Campbell, that is a compliment of some value. And when they are talking from a different land, from a different time, from a different background, and they are having some kind of understanding of Ramakrishna, why they are saying so. Talking about the testimony of Sri Ramakrishna to the harmony of religions, the famous historian Arnold Toynbee, he says that here is the attitude and the spirit that can make it possible for the human race to actually grow together into a single family. This is how he discovered Sri Ramakrishna. He goes further and says that, and in the atomic age, this is the only alternative to destroying ourselves. That is a remarkable compliment. After the study of the entire history of mankind, he has come to this conclusion that in Sri Ramakrishna, we find a solution to the major problem that the entire mankind is facing now. Swami Vivekananda, who is considered as the most important commentator on the personality of Sri Ramakrishna, that Swami Vivekananda found Sri Ramakrishna as the ideal man for this time. He found him that Sri Ramakrishna was the ideal person on two major counts. Number one, that here we find the consolidation and synthesis of all the human achievements in one place. And then he says that second one was that here we find an universal person who has actually lived that life and demonstrated it. So in Swamiji's understanding, Sri Ramakrishna was the modern man or the ideal man for the modern age for these two counts. That all the achievements of the human race, they are ideal, and the values that the human race had created in the past and in the present, in the East as well as in the West. Everything has been synthesized and harmonized and personalized in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. That is the way Swami Vivekananda saw Sri Ramakrishna, and he presented it as the ideal for this age. There has not been in the entire history of mankind a person who has actually demonstrated the life that Sri Ramakrishna has shown in the way, the divinity of life, the fulfillment of all ideals and all values of human life. Sri Ramakrishna demonstrated in his life the infinite possibility of the spirit, the human soul. That is how Swami Vivekananda presented him. So we see that there are different ways of looking at Sri Ramakrishna, that how Sri Ramakrishna was the messenger for this time, and why and how Sri Ramakrishna was the ideal for this modern age. There are three major messages that are supremely valuable for our time. First one was that Sri Ramakrishna was a messenger of hope for our time. Every age in the history marks a transition in that time. And every age needs a messenger who takes people through that transition on the right track. Our time, this modern time that we are living in, it is facing a major crisis in history. What is the crisis? The crisis is that we are living in a life, in a time of doubt. This is the major crisis in the modern time in human history. And we needed a messenger who could help us out of this crisis. The rapidity with which the scientific and technological development and the secular knowledge that is attacking the human civilization now, the social order of thousands of years of human civilization is shaken to the point that it was not prepared to receive this kind of attack. many different well-established ideals and values, they are doubted now, or they are outright removed and thrown away from our life. The institutions of thousands of years of validity, they are now no longer that valid or no longer that solid and acceptable. Take, for example, religion. Religion is an institution which people had taken for granted for thousands of years. But now we find people are asking many different questions which had never been asked before. People are asking, is there really a God there? Is there any truth in the existence of a soul in the body? Day before yesterday, I was in Santa Barbara, and I faced one young boy there, a teenage boy, who after the talk, he met me and asked me this question, that do you really believe that there is a soul in the body? That was his question, young boy. The validity about the efficacy of all our spiritual practices, the prayer, the worship, the selfless service, are they really meaningful? They ask. They ask about the ultimate goal of human life. Is there any other purpose of this life? Many questions are asked which were never asked before. It was always taken for granted, but now it is a time that we are passing through when more and more people, on account of the overwhelming influence of the scientific and technological information and different levels of secular knowledges that are now pervading our society, now these questions have become very important and prominently on the surface of our society. And these questions, they are very important because depending on the answers lie our very existence, that the purpose of human life, the meaning and purpose of human life, that all depends upon the answer to these questions. So we find that this first message of Sri Ramakrishna, the messenger of hope, that he came to answer this question. His life and his teaching was an answer to this very vital question of human race that he found out through his own experiments in his own life. That yes, there is a meaning, yes, there is a purpose, the God is real. Not only that God is real and God is realized by one person, it can be realized by all. And not only it can be realized by all, but on that only depends upon the existential problem to be solved in all lives. The ultimate solution or lasting solution to our existential problem that depends upon the answer to this one question. The question about the reality of God and reality of soul. We find that Sri Ramakrishna's coming and his delivering this message that was most important and fundamental to this human existential problem. And this one most unique question that has divided the present state of our society from the all past time in the history. This was a very important part of Sri Ramakrishna's life, his message, He came as a messenger of hope, and he revived again the faith in our minds. Second message that we find that came with Sri Ramakrishna was that he gave to the world this message of dignity of life. From dignity, it emerged to the divinity of life. This message is so important to this time today because what we see in the history that our time is passing through a very different level of social awareness. The transition of the social awakening that we see in the modern time have never been seen before. The human race for last 100 years or so, everywhere they have woken up to a different level of consciousness. From the time of socialistic movement and socialistic revolution to the modern time, we find that many different kinds of issues have become very prominent issues in the mind of people in the society. And many different kinds of anti-discriminatory issues that have roiled the human civilization for past 100 years or so, they are about to restore the dignity of life in many different forms. The dignity of life, not only in the human level, but dignity of life at many different levels. People and the whole society, they have stood up to fight against all sorts of discrimination and to restore the dignity of life at the human level, at the animal level, at the plant level, at many different levels. People are fighting for biodiversity, people are fighting for the animal rights. Many different ways people are now standing up. The human conscience is getting awakened to stand up for the dignity of life as such. The way it is happening now, that has never been seen before. It is very unique and it is very different from all the period of history that we see of man in the past thousands of years. So this is a different time when people are waking up and they are demanding the dignity of life at every different levels. The spiritual atmosphere in India at the time of Sri Ramakrishna, that was very different. There were this awakening coming for the dignity of life, but alongside the dignity of life, there was a different issue that were troubling them. The spiritual atmosphere of India that they were tackling the issue of was different in Sri Ramakrishna's time because of a different reason. The age-old principles of Vedanta that were almost forgotten, the basic principles of Vedanta were replaced by a different meaning of it. Instead of fundamental principle of Vedanta that talks about the ultimate reality of spirit everywhere, on account of centuries of misinterpretation, it had been taken over by the doctrine of Maya. The main principle that were being preached in the name of Vedanta were that whatever you live and experience in your life, that is nothing but an illusion. That is an illusion that has been created by Maya, And everyone who is serious about their spiritual experience or realization of the truth, they have to stay away from this trap of Maya that is appearing in front of our life in all different forms. So this is what has become a different issue that were being tackled by the religious minds in India during the time of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna came with a different message. Sri Ramakrishna's message was to re-establish the divinity of spirit, the divinity of life. That was the answer to all these two different kinds of issues that had eventually become very important issues. Through his own life, he found out that nothing but there is divine everywhere. In all people, in all creature, everywhere, he only saw the divinity there. There was visible differences outwardly, but that was on account of the manifestation of the divinity in different ways. The manifestations were different, but the divinity inside, they remained same and one. This is what Sri Ramakrishna experienced in his own life, and this is what he preached. He saw that divinity in the poor, in the miserable, in the so-called sinner, in the downtrodden. Everywhere he saw the same one divinity existing. This is a very different message that were necessary to make the adjustment in the outlook in the modern age. This message of divinity, that is the trumping over the message of so-called humanism. The humanism that is so very important and popular and gradually gaining momentum in the minds of the modern people, that humanism cannot stand by its own accord without being supported by the message of divinity of man as Sri Ramakrishna has given. The message of divinity that Vedanta gives, Swami Vivekananda has explained that message of divinity is the right face to all the human urge for humanism. The man's urge for humanism, it has to be there, supported by the main reason and cause behind, which is the divinity prevailing everywhere. So this message that ultimately each soul is divine, that is a great and grand message which changes all outlook. In Indian outlook, Sri Ramakrishna's this message that changed the total picture of practicing religion, which Swami Vivekananda in course of time explained in the form of his grand preaching of practical Vedanta. And he was very clear in his explaining that this message had come from his teacher, his guru, Sri Ramakrishna. That why do we go reach out and why do we serve people, why we treat each one and everyone equally, it is because of the divine that is there behind. That he called this practice of Vedanta in our day-to-day life. This message is a grand message of Sri Ramakrishna. The third message is that very celebrated message of harmony of religions. Harmony of religions that is now gradually being accepted by others also. Others by others means that many different other religious communities and groups, they are slowly warming up to the idea of harmony of religions. this harmony of religions that Arnold Toynbee, as I mentioned, he has very rightly picked up that as that is the only alternative to our destroying ourselves in the modern time. Why so? Because the rapidity with which the science and technology is bringing people of all different backgrounds, of all different races, of all different religious belief system, dangerously close to each other, and the exclusivity factors in many different religions, they make this closeness with each other so very alarming that in this situation we find that this message of harmony of religion is the only saving grace, without which we find this religious intolerance and religious extremism. When this harmony of religion is not understood and not accepted, then this intolerance and this extremism, they become a real problem and real danger for our life. We cannot any longer stay away from this danger and keep our eyes shut and closed and not recognize this real danger. This is a very real, palpable danger in this modern human society, and this can only be addressed with this one message of Sri Ramakrishna, the message of harmony of religions. Sri Ramakrishna lived his life, though later on when it was asked, Holy Mother said that he did not live his life or practice any religion with any kind of such ulterior motives. But we see that in effect, Sri Ramakrishna, as if he was practicing his own spiritual life to deliver this one grand message to the world. He practiced all the different forms of different sects and different religious factions that were available within Hinduism in his life, and also many different religions that were available that came originating from outside lands and came to this one conclusion that truth is one and everyone is only seeking, searching that one truth. This reality, it was experienced by him, it is not a theoretical understanding or any kind of intellectual conclusion. He saw that one and only reality everywhere. Going through all different religious disciplines, he discovered that one and only truth that were existing. So coming out of his all those experiences, he could tell people with that conviction that this harmony of religion is the only sane thing that people should practice now. Before Sri Ramakrishna came, because Sri Ramakrishna came for this age, as I started with, that this is a different age we are living in, and in this transition period, which is very critical period, when different values are changing and different ways people are living their life, Sri Ramakrishna's message, they are therefore very meaningful for this age. So when he gave this message of harmony of religion that were so very important and valuable for our life today, this was not that very important some 1,000 years back. We find that through Sri Ramakrishna, this wonderful spiritual experience that is coming to us, that is the only saving solution for our crucial problem that the whole human civilization is facing today. And more we are agreeing to what Arnold Toynbee said, that this is the only alternative to destroying ourselves. So we find that these three messages of Sri Ramakrishna, they are the great news and great grand hope for all these human races that are now struggling for a solution to their problem today. This first message, that there is real reason and purpose and goal of human life, that God is real, that our self is real, and all these things that are there in the scripture, that is true. This first message. The second message, that it is possible to realize the truth and experience it, and there lies the solution to our existential problem. And this third message of harmony of all religions. These three messages that Sri Ramakrishna gave to us, that can only save our society in this modern day. Sri Ramakrishna, these three messages when he gave, the best part of these messages is that these messages are universal in character. They are applicable to all people of all different backgrounds and all times to come. Today they are true. 100 years from now also they will be equally true. And people, irrespective of their background, different racial background, they can accept these messages so very equally and benefit from there. There was a beautiful song that was sung in Bengal more than 100 years back, composed by one of the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. It said that, "Eseche nuton manus dekhbi jodi aaye chole." It translates into, a new man has come, if you want to see him, come on. That song was later on translated into many different languages. And the popular way of singing that song was, early in the morning, people in procession, they will go, sing and dance. Those young men and women who were singing this song more than 100 years back, they considered Sri Ramakrishna as the new man. They came, they sang, they danced, they grew old and they passed away. Through years, generation after generation have come, and thousands of people, they have sang this song. For all of them, Sri Ramakrishna is that new man. Sri Ramakrishna is the new man, and he is the man of hope for our society. He is both the man and new. New because he is the embodiment of that which is ever new. In our scripture, that ultimate truth and reality is ever new. There is no change in him, that changeless one reality, he is eternally new. Sri Ramakrishna was that new. He is the face and manifestation of that eternal reality. And he is manifested in the form of a man, so that is why he is depicted as the new man. So when we talk about Sri Ramakrishna, we get a new kind of a hope and a new kind of an energy and new kind of an ideal to live by, so that we can also make our life livable and eventually successful in realizing the same truth. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
We just heard from the revered Swami about Sri Ramakrishna, who he was, his message, and the significance for this age and for us. As he was saying, the great challenges that face us and how Sri Ramakrishna is a response to those challenges. We, especially in this generation and in this country, we have grown up with an atmosphere of doubt about religion. So the eternal principles, verities, which have not gone challenged for centuries, they have been challenged. There have been skeptics in every age, but never like it is being challenged today in the last 100 years or so. So questions about, does God exist? Do we have an eternal soul? Do we exist before our birth? Were there other lives after death? Shall we exist at all? These questions are being raised and raised seriously. And God has given a reply. You know, I'm reminded of this very funny cartoon I saw. Nietzsche, the great German philosopher, he famously said, God is dead. And I saw this cartoon in which, on the wall, you know, the people write things on the wall. So it's written on the wall, God is dead, and signed Nietzsche. And below it, it's written, Nietzsche is dead, signed God. So even as we raise these questions, God gives answers. And the answer was given by God in 1836 in a remote corner of the world, in a remote corner of India, in the little village of Kamarpukur, as revered Swami said, when Sri Ramakrishna was born, in the life of Sri Ramakrishna and in its meaning. Swami Vivekananda said of Sri Ramakrishna that he lived the life and I read its meaning. So we need both the life of Ramakrishna and reading the meaning into the life of Ramakrishna and what it means to us. As the Swami pointed out very interestingly at the very beginning of his talk, to many people, when Sri Ramakrishna was there, actually living in Dakshineshwar physically, to many people, he appeared to be an ordinary person, one among millions, a madman, worse than ordinary, crazy. It's only those who investigated, tried to understand, they understood. So not only at that time till today, the Swami spoke about Isherwood and Aldous Huxley and Joseph Campbell and many others. If you have read the wonderful book, American Veda, by Phil Goldberg, where he talks about the significance of the Eastern religions which have come into American society over the last 100 years and assigns a central role to Swami Vivekananda and those who came after Swami Vivekananda, and a central role to this Vedanta Society of Southern California. There's a whole chapter where he describes how these ideas were disseminated from here. And scholars, writers, artists, Campbell, Isherwood, Aldous Huxley, many of them. He mentions many of them. And there's a very nice chapter on how he says, the Swamis taught the smart guys and the smart guys taught the rest of us. So there's a chapter, that's the name of the chapter. So these ideas, they require a little bit of investigation. As the Swami said, it's those who investigated, those who tried to think and learn about it, they got the significance and they got the benefit out of it. So that's one thing we need to know to get benefit from it, from all this, in our personal lives, in our spiritual struggle, in our private spiritual struggle. We need to investigate this. We need to know more about Ramakrishna and more about the significance of Ramakrishna in our lives. The other thing that the Swami told us is that religion is a matter of realization. It's not theory, not abstractions, It can actually be realized. When you ask, does God exist? Do we have an eternal soul? Ramakrishna says, yes, God exists. Why do you say so? Because I've seen God. And he says, so can you. You can actually realize God. You can see God. Not only that, he says that is the purpose of human life. To the great question of what is the purpose of life, meaninglessness is supposed to be a great problem in our society. To that question, Ramakrishna answers, the purpose of life is to discover the divinity within each of us, to actually experience it, to make it a living reality. Another thing the Swami pointed out, a special characteristic, one of the great features of our times, is that the world has become a small place. We have all come close. Now, it's a great thing, coming close. And look at Los Angeles. India is supposed to be a diverse place, but I have understood now Los Angeles is much more diverse than India itself. It's probably one of the most diverse places on this planet. So when you come close together, one of the dangers is because people are different cultures, different races, different attitudes, different languages, habits, there is a possibility, increasingly realized possibility of conflict. So, Sri Ramakrishna gave an answer to this more than 100 years ago. The answer was harmony. Not uniformity. All people cannot become the same. That's impossible. On one end lies uniformity, and the other end lies conflict. But the resolution is in Sri Ramakrishna's message, as the Swami pointed out just now, is in the harmony of religions, and harmony in general. Let the differences remain. Differences enrich our lives, but we can remain and coexist and enrich each other, a harmonious life, a harmonious civilization.